Welcome to Catholic Champion. I'm your host, John Yep, and my co-host, Michael Hichborn. Today on the show, we are talking about the slaughter of Christians in the Middle East, the latest on the #1 killer in America, and last but not least, did you know that you are being spied on? Stay tuned. Welcome to our weekly show. We are in the second week of Advent. We have Gaudete Sunday. It's Sunday, right? Coming up very soon. We are getting close to the Feast of Christmas, and there's a lot going on in the world. I think it's ironic that our first topic that we hit is what is going on near the land where Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem, so close to our hearts. Spiritual home for Christians around the world. And obviously, Mike, you know what I'm talking about. And I just wanted to start this whole clip out with showing images that a lot of us have been seeing on social media or videos similar to this. And it should draw the healthy passion from Catholics and Christians all over the world. Hit the clip.
يلا عوي 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 حي الله الشيخ ابو حاتم طلي طلي قاقي قاقي مثل الدجاجه قاقي 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 قاقي.
You saw that clip, Michael?
Not until now.
What that is for our audience, I would assume that you caught the news that in Syria there was a hostile takeover by Assad was currently in power, and a group of rebels, so-called rebels, stormed into the airport and they took over the palace, removed Assad and his wife. They fled to eventually Russia, and the persecution of Christians began. And what you saw right there are the new leaders of power in Syria, and the subsequent slaughter that has begun to happen in Syria, which is near Damascus, where Christians were called Christians for the first time. And it's what gets me. The main reason we're talking about this is the silence, the relative silence that goes on throughout the media world every time that Christians are under attack. Literally, they're being killed. And I mean, it's a general trend that continues to happen, and it just can't be. What do you think, Mike, when you saw the whole Syrian takeover and what that meant? Because it's nuanced.
It is nuanced. We have to remember that the Christians enjoyed a rather liberal existence in Syria under Assad. So his removal destabilizes the area, and it will cause a stark persecution of the Christians, as we just saw in that video clip. One of the things that I think people need to kind of take away from this, and what they need to remember, is that these rebel groups do not manufacture their own weapons. They don't manufacture their own battle fatigues. They don't manufacture their own accoutrements, the sidearms that they carry. These are coming from somewhere. And the question is, where did they get these weapons? Who organized them, and why was this such a surprise? Why was Assad not aware that they were amassing, or that there was going to be this prepared rebellion, this overthrow? Something happened within the community of intelligence that the United States absolutely knew about. Russia knew about it. There's not an intelligence community in the world that did not know that this was taking place. So the question is, who dropped the ball and why?
Absolutely. And it's come out subsequently that, look, these people, first of all, who took over? Who are these people? They're basically members of Al-Qaeda, okay? Mm-hmm. They're recycled Al-Qaeda, ISIS fighters that, have been pushed forward to remove this regime. U.S. weapons or U.S. finances for sure are behind this operation, okay? Which begs the question, why? Why was this allowed? And it's I think there's a lot happening behind the scenes as we get closer to Trump taking over in office. That's trying to be people are jockeying for positions to leverage, and we're seeing that played out now on the world stage. But what gets me most though is, I mean, would you agree, Michael, that it's a common thing that so many times where there are Christians who are literally being martyred, if that's the right word, and there's a general silence. I mean, you could do it yourself. Just try Googling persecution of Christians in Syria. I mean, you have to dig around, and the articles that you find are not like your mainstream. So you're not going to find a CNN piece, for instance, right, on what's going on with it. You probably would not see that video that we just showed, which is all over X. Is that fair to say? And
no, that's absolutely fair to say. And the abject silence that comes from the mainstream media on this particular topic, it's an echo of the hard left mantra that keeps getting spewed from the the leftist media. They don't want you to know about persecution of Christians because they side with the Muslims. They don't want you to know about persecution of they don't want you to know about persecution unless it's an agenda that fits in line with their particular ideology. And that's really what it boils down to. And if we want to have any kind of effective change, we've got to change the narrative. We've got to change the understanding and the appreciation of what it is that we're up against. The fact of the matter is we are up against radical Islam. And Islam, until Islam is understood as an enemy of Christianity and the Christian world, there will be no appreciation for what is really happening and why the Christians are persecuted. We have to change the narrative. We've got to stop pussyfooting around this and saying, look, these people are enemies of Christians and enemies of the Western world, period.
Yes. They are enemies, and they continue to show their hand as such. I mean, they make no qualms about that. We all just celebrated the Cathedral of Notre Dame being
burned down.
Dedicated. Yeah, exactly. And still to this day, it's not exactly clear who caused that. Right now, you can say whatever you want, that was an electrician. They fell, the faulty wires. Okay, maybe, but how does that pair with the fact that like hundreds of other churches around France and around the world continue to be burned down? Okay. Yeah. Like if the media can't come up with an explanation, well, logic can at least propose a valid possibility, which it could be caused by extremists of the Islamic extremists, right? They are taking over Europe, and they're not making any qualms about it. They're being very open about that, right? So they are on the offensive, and they hate Christian with a passion, right? And you can see it. And just look at those men who were up against the wall with their, they had the boot on top of their head, and who knows what happens to their wives, their kids, their daughters. I can only imagine. And they could be with God right now for all we know. So we got to be speaking up about this, right? We absolutely, it's just, do not get used to, and I think we've done, as a society, we've done tremendous in terms of overcoming the media narrative, or just understanding where your sources of information have come from, right? It's, you see it with, I think CBS last month, Michael, had 28,000 per day average viewers per night. Okay. That's like nothing. And CNN had like 54,000. So the traditional media sources are collapsing right now as we know it. And that's a good thing.
Completely, because they're the ones controlling the narrative. And they get really upset when they're not able to control the narrative. You can see it in their reporting. They're losing control of it. The last election cycle was almost characterized by, it's the last election cycle where you had vestiges of the traditional media sources. These are television outlets, cable news that have been in places for the last like 60 years, right? The last vestiges of them or breaths of them where they had any kind of relative influence. I would even suspect that the next presidential election, we won't even have the debates
there on cable news. Like, it won't be a Fox News. It won't be it'll be on a Joe Rogan. It'll be on Elon Musk, right? So this is good. It bodes very, very well for what we need to be doing.
I agree. And, to be honest, I would like to see no exclusive coverage of the presidential debates. I think they should be held on a neutral site, and then multiple media outlets would be there to report on it, as opposed to having a media sponsored debate. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that was ever made in the American politeia.
Charlie Kirk had a great guest on yesterday, and they were kind of talking about the White House press corps, and there are 49 seats in that room. Okay. And Charlie was just spitting back and forth talking about how that whole room needs to be revamped. Okay. So the seats either, typically, to be part of the White House press corps, they should do the same thing with the Vatican, by the way. But, to remove those, if you're not getting the views where you have Joe Rogan, who gets he's got 50 million people on his podcast, something like that. Yeah. So he should be in that room. A producer of his should be in there. Charlie Kirk should be represented in that room, and get the other ones out. They're clearly biased, right? Or at least do it 50-50, or at least have the viewership max, because the reality is Americans today don't get their news from those traditional sources. They don't. Right. So the video that we just showed, where did we show it from? X. Okay. So why this is part of the whole conversation about the Christians. Obviously, we're going to be praying for them. I was speaking up, talking about it, but it's one more reminder that you got to reset your brains, and you got to teach other people around you that are still caught up in the system about where you get your information. You got to be proactive. You got to go after it, right? So, which is great. In that sense, it's good news.
No, you're right. Absolutely.
Let's talk about the abortion pill, the latest news there. So President Trump was talking, and this was a hot issue. This would be going into the new administration, even if Trump won, that us Catholics, us scientific people rather, would not forget that in the July or in the August GOP convention, the safeguarding of the abortion pill was embedded into the party platform. That is no bueno. That cannot happen. Absolutely not. We cannot accept the fact that abortion pills are going to be allowed in this country, right? So were you able to see the interview by chance, Michael? Meet the Press, what Trump was talking about? He brought up a conversation, maybe he didn't, but he was talking there on NBC about, they asked, so are you going to be holding the line with abortion pills? Are you going to be restricting it? Trump's comment, did it give you hope, Michael, or not so much? Because he did say that, look, although he's not going to, he's probably going to keep the restrictions, he is open to change. What does that mean?
No, and what that means is that we have to face the reality that Trump is not fully pro-life, that he doesn't recognize that children under a certain gestational age within the womb are legitimate people that are worthy of defense. He doesn't see it that way. You can't make exceptions for rape and incest when it comes to abortion if you believe that the person who is being murdered on the other end of the abortion is a person. So there's a cognitive dissonance there, and he doesn't recognize the personhood of those children up to a certain age. That's a problem. Because when you look at things like mifepristone, the abortion pill, even, abortifacient contraception, you have to acknowledge that these things take the life of a living human being, a human person, from the very moment of fertilization, that point where, and they've seen it in scientific experiments, when that fertilization is completed, when the sperm permeates the egg, there's a flash of light. And that's written in scripture that we are children of light. We're born in light. So when you have that moment of creation, that flash of light in that instant, that is when a new person is created. And that's when you have to start the defense of that person. So the problem that we have right now is that Trump doesn't recognize that. He doesn't understand that. And unfortunately, that's been the set talking point ever since 1965, when the ACOG, which is the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, they changed the definition of pregnancy. The definition of pregnancy up till that point had been that from the moment of creation, the moment of fertilization, was,
what year was that prior to Roe v. Wade?
Absolutely. That was 1965 was when they made that change. And the reason that they made that change was because they knew the action of the contraceptive pill. They knew that it caused abortion. It would stop a pregnancy. So it would prevent the newly formed child from implanting in the womb. So they changed the definition of pregnancy so that it's no longer a matter of the beginning of fertilization, but the beginning of implantation, and when it's detectable by a test. So when the body starts producing the hormones that indicate pregnancy, well, that's when they mark the beginning of pregnancy. So there's a problem with the change of words, the change of definitions, and this is how we got to the point that we are, where the current president of the United States doesn't understand that very beginning is right when life begins. So we have to reach him. We have people that can reach him. They have to continue to have that conversation. I think they need to have that fundamental conversation on that personal level of explaining not just the biological reality, but also the spiritual reality as well. And I think that he's reachable on that point. It's just a matter of getting there. So am I hopeful in what he said? If we can have that conversation, then yes.
I'm going to recycle a phrase. Follow the science.
Yeah.
Follow the science. It's, the fact that, first of all, that he said, no, it's absolutely not going to change. No way, Jose. No, he said there'd be room for, he's probably going to stick with what he said. I always love the states side. But at the same time, he's saying that he's also putting people around him that don't think like that. Okay.
Right.
Like, let's start with the vice president. Yes, JD came out and was basically saying, I'm going to toe the line with what President Trump said, essentially with the abortion pill. But, if you really sit down with the vice president, I don't really think he believes that it's okay, because 63% of abortions nationwide happen through the abortion pill. And so, JD, I think, would be open for the conversation. Trump, too. Trump's a very reasonable guy. He always has been that way. Right. To have a conversation, to sit down, to talk, even talk with his enemies. I mean, Justin Trudeau was there at the Mar-a-Lago. You see that?
Yeah, I did.
Thanksgiving dinner, which is obviously hilarious because he was just trolling him and has become the 51st state. But I think what that shows, though, I mean, if that was my Thanksgiving dinner and I had somebody like Justin Trudeau who had been trashing me and my family for the entire year before and calling me a whatever, invited to my Thanksgiving dinner. But I think this is where people also misread Trump superficially. They think he's completely an arrogant, whatever, all about himself. But he really is open to working with anybody, even his enemies, if they can advance the common good. So I sincerely do believe that there's hope because of how Trump is personally. JD is the vice president. But let's go to the FDA. The FDA is the one that was responsible for jamming these abortion pills, mifepristone, through without doing the normal test. Okay? Right. They snuck it in there. Okay? So it's, in some ways with the jab, right? They kind of bypass a lot of tests as well. But that's for another conversation, another platform. But I will say, who is the new FDA commissioner? Marty Malarkey. This guy is a big pro-life gentleman, and he's got a huge background. His track record shows that. he's done a lot of work just even exposing the fact that fetuses at 15 weeks can feel pain, right?
Right.
So you have a new FDA commissioner who happens to be pro-life, Christian. He's in charge of that. So what's he going to do, right? So I think there's a lot of hope all around.
Sure. You know, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that there is a powerful lobby behind the pill, behind the abortion pill. The very first company that was allowed to produce mifepristone in the United States is called Danco Laboratories. And there is very, very, very little known about this company. It was started effectively in 1994. And it has ties with the Population Council, which is very interesting because the Population Council is all about reducing fertility rates around the world. It's all about reducing the population because they're all a part of this globalist zero growth population movement because they're environmentalists at the heart of it. They think that people are a cancer on society and that they have to be limited like a herd of cattle or a herd of deer. You've got to cull the herd so that they're no longer a drain on resources. It's a very socialist, very communist concept. But Danco Laboratories has almost no footprint. Nobody really knows much about it. It was in September 28th of 2000 that they received approval to distribute mifepristone by the FDA. And then in 2019,
okay,
what's that?
What year was that?
2000.
So in 2000, that's when the abortion pill first got basically the ability to be passed out, distributed through this company in the United States, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And then in 2019, Gen Bio Pro, another very quiet company, was also able to get approval to sell the generic version of mifepristone in the United States. So those are the only two companies that have permission to sell manufactured mifepristone in the US. But there's really they're both private companies. There's very little information on the structure of these companies, who's in charge, who the board is, what their profits are. There's almost no information on these groups. And they say that, well, we're afraid of the anti-abortion activists out there, and we want to make sure that our people are safe. But if they're part of some network, or if they have, we don't even know what the flow of funding, or how much funding they're getting, and who they're selling to, and where the
what about federal grants? Do you know that? Are they getting federal grant money?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen any, but it's possible.
That's okay. So it's two companies, Gen Bio Pro, and then Danco. So these two companies, and then where are they based? Do we know, like, even like physical geographical location?
So it's funny. Danco Laboratories is
Delaware is a nonprofit.
No, it's located in Manhattan. But the only physical location you can find is a PO box. There's really no other information about them on that. In terms of Gen Bio Pro, again, there's not a whole lot of information on their physical location. So
that's concerning. And I also want to bring up the report about, this was produced by All Vice President Hugh Brown. It details the American Life League, a study on who's behind the cartel. The title of the article is literally called "Beneath the Surface: Exposing the Abortion Pill Drug Cartel," which we're going to post on our socials. But the key takeaways of this report, there are 4 of them. So I'm just going to briefly read. I think bring to light a lot what you're saying, Michael, and even worse. Number 1, the abortion pill regimen of mifepristone and misoprostol can be accessed in all 50 states and U.S. territories due to the FDA's 2023 removal of in-person regulations to obtain abortion pills. So they can be mailed, essentially, right?
Yep.
Number 2, networks of abortion providers and volunteers are working as drug dealers via the internet and U.S. postal system are illegally sending these pills to customers. So they're completely, you can just go online, buy these instead of having to go to the doctor, get a prescription or get whatever. You can just order them right there online. They come to your door, and death is in your mailbox waiting, right? The death. Abortion regulations will not work to stop abortion pills from being sold. We know that. And the Postal Service, FDA, keep out the FDA, and other government agencies have neglected to investigate these individual networks of volunteers that provide abortion pills illegally and consistently to the mailing systems. So you have, like in many things, you have government support for this death industry, which is pretty frightening. By the way, that number 63% of abortions are through the pill. I bet it's even higher. Like,
oh, I'm sure it is.
Like, and a lot of these pills also are being shipped originally. My friend was a lawyer at ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, and some of their cases were basically figuring out how some of these states were getting these pills through, or private companies through, like Austria or Australia, and getting them shipped in there and bypassing laws to get to people, individuals. So it's criminal of what's going on, and it's morally reprehensible.
You know what else is interesting? There's another company that is kind of slipping under the radar. It's called Tia Women's Health. Tia Women's Health, also based out of New York. So very interesting. You've got what's that?
Go figure, New York, Manhattan.
Yeah, go figure, New York. But this is where Margaret Sanger got her start, was in New York. So there's a lot of connections to New York and the birth control movement, the rise of birth control and the spread of birth control, everything. It all seems to center in New York. But there's a company called Tia Women's Health. It started off as an app. It was basically a women's health app, and it was all about getting access to reproductive clinics. They had this chat. It was a chat app called Ask Tia, which is basically Ask the Aunt, Ask Auntie. Well, they very quickly rose to prominence. The CEO is now multimillionaire without having produced anything. All she did was create this app, and she used to work for Google, by the way. She was in their marketing department. And it wasn't until they partnered with Common Spirit Health, the largest Catholic health network in the United States, that they started opening up physical locations. And they also made a business. They created their business model on the downfall of Roe v. Wade to sell the abortion pill through the mail. And they looked at the legality of it. They looked at how they would actually foster this. And they are making bank by sending the abortion pill through the mail and contacting these young women through their physical locations. But their prominence came through the largest Catholic health network in the country. And it's absolutely disgusting.
Common Spirit
Health. Yes.
So you have Tia Women, which, by the way, the fact that it has a Spanish name, or it also shows you a lot as well. They're targeting Latina women. Okay.
Yep.
Everyone, but specifically, right? So, and it's, once again, we have complicity with Catholic organizations who are making this possible. It's almost like it's similar to what Catholic Charities has done, members of Catholic Charities with the southern border, right? Facilitating that invasion there and the subsequent human trafficking that occurs because of it. So you have the same thing with the abortion, which is just absolutely mind-boggling. That, and I know, Michael, you've done a lot of work with Lepanto probably to expose that and talk about that, but this has got to be brought up because our bishops have got to be speaking up about this. I know they just released a press release asking Biden to commute all death sentences in the United States, which, okay, although death penalty is a valid Catholic thing, goes back, to the scripture. But we need you speaking up about this too. This cannot be. This is a reality. And women are being permanently, and dads, affected and destroyed. Lives destroyed. Siblings are losing their sisters or brothers in the womb because of this, and we got to speak up.
Well, yeah, I mean, the bishops need to really kind of step up their game and say, you know what? Part of the problem is that the USCCB and most of the bishops in the United States won't even speak out about contraception. So if they won't talk about contraception, the chances of them talking about the abortion pill are very, very negligible. I mean, there are very few that are even willing to step out and talk about abortion at all. I mean, Cardinal Supich, for crying out loud, when he was in Spokane, Washington, forbade his priests from participating in pro-life marches. You know, when you have that level of animosity towards the defense of the most defenseless in this country, it's not shocking that that the majority of these bishops aren't willing to speak up. But, you know, I think that there are some that are very good. Bishop Burbage is the current head of the USCCB's pro-life committee, and he is very solid, and he's been putting out all kinds of solid statements about pro-life initiatives. Archbishop Naumann from Kansas City, he was fantastic as the head of the pro-life committee at the USCCB. But when you look at the makeup of the USCCB itself and the funding that these departments get, do you realize that the pro-life department at the USCCB gets the least money out of all of the departments?
That syncs also with the 17 national collections that they have every single year, which are required to be every parish.
There's never been a pro-life collection. Never once.
Exactly. Unbelievable.
Speaks volumes. It's not a priority for them. You know why? Because there's no money in it.
It's sick. There's
there are no government grants that come with being pro-life, so why would you get involved? You know, I mean, but we have to remember the USCCB is a lobbying organization. That's really all the USCCB is.
Exactly. In the beginning, it may not have been so, but it absolutely has become that. Stay tuned for a book that's coming out published by Catholics for Catholics and reviewed by my co-host here called Charity for Sale, which is going to delve deeply into the whole history of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops and how in many ways, like you're speaking about, Michael, it has become a government NGO. And that's not a good thing for proclaiming the salvific mission of the church here on this earth, right? It needs to free itself from that. And it can. And we have got to do our part to allow it because we're just showing you facts, right? The fact that in 40 or 50 years of national collections, there's never been a pro-life one. And there's a silence or even, looking the other way when you have these groups, Catholic groups, who are participating. The same thing with the transgender, right? We can go down that road. I would venture to say that I think you do a piece of exposing that, Michael, with how there are Catholic hospitals too, which
Common Spirit Health once again.
Common Spirit Health. Is that Jesuit?
No, it's a merger between several other different Catholic health systems. It was a merger that took place in 2019, and it's been an unmitigated disaster. There's barely anything Catholic about it at all.
But does it have like a bishop on its board or?
Its board it's kind of an odd makeup. I mean, most of the board is it's all lay. They do have bishop oversight, but whether they have any real say in the policy of the organization is yet to be seen. I do know that they get their Catholic identity directly from the Vatican.
Just like the spirit of Pope Francis, kind of, is that like the verbiage? Or
no, there's an entity that was created, and I can't remember the name of the entity right off the top of my head, but it's a corporate entity that was created in the United States, and it was given authority to give the Catholic identity to Common Spirit Health. So they even stripped individual bishops from the ability to strip the name Catholic from Common Spirit Health to tell them they can't call themselves a Catholic health system.
Really? Okay. Yeah. It's unbelievable. And they're just, so these two groups, or this group, is basically going full out blast with the abortion pill and also facilitating, like we just said, with some of these transgender child mutilations, right? And the same thing. They're complicit in that. So we bring this up. Half the reason we bring this up, as well as the first issue or the first point about the slaughter of Christians, the media narrative, is you got to reset how you take in the news or information and not get used to the silence that pervades in so many parts of the church. It's just not normal. Okay. So, and you can get so used to, okay, that's just the way it is. That's the way a church leader is. That's the way a follower of Christ is. They just kind of like look at this stuff and they just shut up, or they talk about something else, or you have a bishop like Zupich who just forbids his priest from going to speak about that. Right.
Right.
No. Okay. It's not normal. It is not normal for this. Thankfully we had some normality with the 10 states that had the propositions on their ballots this past year, past election. We lost 7 out of the 10 of them, including in Arizona, but at least every single bishop in every single one of those states at least said something about it. Right? Now, could they have done more? Absolutely. Right? Could we have had marches like some bishops did, or prayer campaigns, or just being out there and speaking about it? Or on X every day, single day, you're having your social media person bringing this up. Vote no on these propositions. Vote no. Absolutely. So we're getting there. We're making changes, but still, it's just not normal. And as a society, as a group of Catholic individuals, we cannot get used to this fact of what's going on in that sense.
No, you're right. And I think that when it comes down to individual bishops, what we need are individual bishops of strength. We need individual bishops who are willing to step into the breach as Moses stepped into the gap and offered himself as sacrifice on behalf of his people. And bishops who are willing to do that are the ones who are going to see real grace-filled, effective changes taking place within their dioceses. That I think that many bishops forget that they are men of miracles. They have the power of the miraculous at their fingertips. And they look at themselves more as administrators than they do as men of miracles, and that's part of the problem. If we want to have a real change in this country, we have to remind them of who they are, of what their office is, of the powers that were given to them to change things in this country, and that, you know, the reason you wear purple as a bishop is partly as a reminder of the sacrifice that you offer of yourself for your own flock. You know, you're supposed to lay your life down, and that includes for the unborn.
Well said. There's the pragmatic value of, or status, that they're effectively like a CEO of, you know, like take Phoenix. We have what, 1.3 million Catholics here. They're the CEO overseeing 1.3 million Catholics. Okay. So they have a potential just for their high status in that sense, numerically. But as you're talking about men of miracles, the spiritual power that they have, the spiritual potency, I do not think, I always use this example, that when we had Bishop Strickland come out to LA for our big rally, June 2023, to protest what the Dodgers were allowing with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, the fact that we had a successor of the apostles there on the premise, that's why we were so adamant on having that bishop there, because the power that they exercised, that he exercised in that moment to thwart spiritual evils, but also things like Antifa. I really believe, I mean, we were going to the belly of the beast there in Los Angeles, and there have been similar protesters from Antifa just a week or two before in other parts of LA. So they do, bishops have a power. They have a power. And I think humbly as lay people, maybe in the same way that Our Lady did with the 12 apostles or 11 apostles after the crucifixion, she was there in the upper room to bring them together, to remind them of the sacred office that they held, and to support them and to challenge them in their own way. We can do that as lay people. We have to. Saints have done it. Our Lady has done it. Catherine of Siena has done it. So we have got to keep encouraging our priests. They need encouragement. They need support. It's not easy, but if they are on fire, what can we do? It's incredible, right?
Absolutely. You know, when I'll be the first to tell you that I complain a lot about the bishops, but when people call and they ask me about, you know, this bishop or that bishop, or they complain about the things that their own bishop is doing, I always remind them, as I have to.
Christ complained about the bishops too.
Yes, he did.
How long I must be with you?
Yes.
Right? So,
yep.
But yeah, keep going. Sorry.
But the point is that I have to remind myself also,
Very.
if we're not praying and fasting for our own bishops, then we're not feeding them. And if they don't have the food that we have to give them, then how can we expect them to have the spiritual strength and fortitude to defend us when it comes down to the wire? So if you want real change in your diocese, you've got to pray, you've got to fast for your bishop, and fasting especially, because that's where the real graces come in. Some of these bishops are surrounded by very dark forces. I'm not going to name names, but the fact of the matter is that we can tell that certain bishops are not playing for the right side. And we have to pray and fast, especially for them, because if we don't, not only will their souls be lost, but the losses that come from their inaction or their action for the wrong side is going to, I mean, the ramifications are incalculable.
I love that point too. It's like we have to feed them both ways. And, every time you criticize somebody else, or it's like you got to look at yourself in the mirror too, the same, right? Because how you judge others, you yourself will be judged as well. So where have I dropped the ball? Where have I not been courageous? Where have I not put prayer first to really pray for our men in office? We have to. This is this country exists because of the prayers of patriots. It does. And we've got to continue that tradition on, because that's how we're going to ultimately flip and bring this country back to God. July 13th is the best example. Trump himself admits it, that it was God and the prayers of many people who saved him. So we got to keep this up. And as we go about this, specifically with the abortion pill in the new administration, let's pray for its the FDA commissioner Malarkey. That is it Malarkey? I'm going to say that wrong. It's Markey. It's not Malarkey. It's Markey. Bad erase cut. But so this individual, I mean, because he has a role, and we pray that he speaks up and just presents the facts. The truth is always on our side. When you look at what this does, not only obviously to the baby in the womb, but to the woman who undergoes this, half of them end up in, with medical issues after the fact. Some in the emergency room, some die. Okay. Yeah. And of course you have the effects that it has on the father, knowing that, subconsciously he does know that his offspring was flushed down the toilet. Okay. Fact, basically. Right. So let's pray. We can do this, but we got to work. We got to speak up.
I was just going to say, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is the hidden history of the abortifacient pill that came out, especially when they were testing the contraceptive pill back in the 60s. They were testing this pill on women down in South America. And there were a lot of women down in South America that died. They were promised money because they were very poor. They were promised money for their household and that kind of thing. But there were a whole lot of women that died as this pill was being tested on them, and they were trying to figure out dosage. They realized that too high a dose causes an issuance of blood, and they can't stop the bleeding, and the woman bleeds out. A lot of times you have the same problem because they treat all women as if they're all the same machine, and the same dose is going to work for everybody. And it's just not the truth. So there's a huge problem with the history of the pill. It's a huge, ugly underbelly that nobody wants to look at, but it's the reality. This whole idea, this whole thing was predicated in death, and it perpetuates death.
That's disgusting. When you were talking, it sounded like you were reading the account of what happened at Auschwitz with some of these medical experiments, right? But that's the truth. They literally, Bill Gates does the same thing with vaccines, right? In some of these African countries, like just get a group of individuals, let's just experiment on them, right?
Yep.
So it's horrible. It's got to be brought to light. There are demonic influences there for sure. Baby sacrifice, absolutely, without a doubt. And this has to be, the truth will set us free. Follow the science, follow truth, because that leads back to Jesus Christ, who does set us free. let's hit that third point. I read this, and yeah, I've heard similar stuff before, but I think it's got to be brought up to light what we are up against, and just the miracle of what happened on November 5th, 2024, when we won the election. Okay. And this report comes out, title of it's produced by LifeSite. Biden administration used banks to spy on Americans' financial data, targeted, drum roll, Trump supporters. This is from the House report. I'm going to show a little video in a second here. The scale of the surveillance is staggering, warrants a new startling report from the House Judiciary Committee. The federal government used sweeping terms like MAGA and Trump to flag Americans who purchase Bibles or firearms as signaling extremism. Let's play that video and we'll comment after. Wow. Okay. Wow. That was not some fringe group producing that video. That was the House Judiciary Committee, okay, who put that video out after publishing the report. Okay. Thoughts on that one, Michael?
Well, to all my friends out there from back in the 90s, I told you so. I knew about this going back to the early 90s. I was studying for my my senior thesis. I was looking into agencies that were monitoring everything in the country, monitoring bank accounts, monitoring transactions, you know, whatever. There's a reason why back in the 1930s, 1940s, there were people stuffing their mattresses with cash. And the reason is they knew that the government was monitoring their bank accounts. They didn't want to be monitored. They didn't want their transactions to be monitored. Going way back, it was already a written rule that if you had a transaction over a certain amount, the federal government would be flagged. They would be informed about the transaction because it could potentially be some sort of domestic crime. You see, large transfers of money obviously are very bad. So you have to make sure that you don't have a transfer of a certain amount. So this monitoring of cash, why do you think the people in the government have been pushing for a cashless society for the last 70 years? They wanted to create digital accounts. They wanted to create credit cards and bank cards. And the reason for this is because you can track transactions when there's a digital imprint. You can't track the transaction that takes place from coin to coin. If I give you a coin and you go and buy something else with a coin, that coin could change 7 hands before it gets back into a bank. But when it comes to digital transactions, everything is recorded and everything is monitored. And the fact that we now know that the government has gotten access to bank accounts without a warrant, it's just another step in that particular direction. We've known that they had this capability. The fact that they actually pulled the trigger now and are conducting these monitoring operations, color me shocked.
It's insane. And it just, how about do you ever go to Whole Foods? I don't know if they have it over there in Virginia, but they have the
yeah, we have Whole Foods.
Yeah, but you put your palm to pay.
Oh, I did not know that. So they're doing biometric scans for transactions now.
Possibility to facilitate your ease at purchasing stuff. Right. Okay.
Just a matter of putting a little microchip right behind the hand, right?
Thanks, but no thanks. I mean, it's one thing that they're monitoring your stuff, okay? Even if they were monitoring it for just strictly good reason or just because, that also is an issue. Just because you can know something doesn't mean you should know something, right? Similar with, but
well,
it goes.
I mean, at the end of the day, what business is it of theirs? The
Right.
federal government has no business knowing what my personal transactions are. All of this comes back to the Federal Reserve Act, which centralized the banks, and it goes to the creation of the IRS and the federal income tax. Why is the government interested in my transactions? Because they want to know what I'm making. They want to know what kind of income I have. They want to make sure that I have a proper balance sheet, and they want to make sure that so that they can take their cut. So a lot of this is just about making sure that they have their cut. They want the amount that they want, but that's only a part of it. It's control. It's all about making sure that we can control the populace, and you are only operating within the paradigm that we want you to operate in. If you step out of that ideological paradigm, well, now you're a target.
And that's a step. And so before, it was probably mostly used for just to know, to be in control, to get their cut, as you said. But what we've seen under the Biden administration is that they have used it to go after political opponents.
Right. I mean, the fact that people are shocked by this right now surprises me, because when you cede power over to people and then you're shocked by the corruption that they have when they have that power over you. I'm sorry. I grew up in an era where giving up power and giving up authority and then recognizing that that power and authority gets transferred to another power and authority at some point. It's not surprising when they finally get that power and authority over you. It's just not.
It's exactly. And talk about the categories of how they want to classify the bad guys. If you bought something MAGA, you bought a gun, you bought a Bible. Those are really were some of the terms that they put into the system to flag people. Okay. Which, by the way, says a lot too. It does say a lot. I always put that as a pat on the back. In some ways, that they continue to associate some of the hardest working patriots with people who believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Okay. Yes, there are extremists within those groups of Christians, for sure. But by and large, most of those patriots, yes, they're God-fearing Christians who are good people. And the fact that the federal government under the Biden administration saw that as a threat tells you everything you got to know. Okay. This is the founding fathers who used the Bible. They all would have been flagged. George Washington would have been flagged for getting the Bible, for using Bible quotes probably in his writings. So it says a lot about who we're up against and why it was so important that we won in November, which we did by the grace of God and a lot of hard work, but also it goes into this new administration because all the bad guys are not out, and we have to continue to support President Trump and those around him to hold the line and give us back the freedom that our patriots fought so hard to earn many years ago. So it's concerning. Can you imagine, Michael, a world without? I mean, what would you do? Seriously, is that even possible anymore? To not have a bank, what would you do?
Oh, you'd do what you did in the old days. You'd keep your
you can't have a lot of these stores don't even accept cash anymore.
Oh, I know.
I was at a coffee shop 2 days ago. They were all, young lady behind him, she was like, oh yeah. She's all proud. Yeah, we don't accept cash anymore. Like, that ain't something to be proud about. I don't know what you're talking about. It might be easy right now. So you can't grocery stores, even if the grocery stores that do, I mean, imagine all the annoying faces behind you as you try to whip out cash, and the girl or the guy behind the counter tries to count it all up, and you're going to be angry stares. People are going to hate it. Okay, so or Venmo, or like try buying a house, or how about paying your apartment bill every single month? What do you do? Like, it's I guess in theory possible, but it's insane, and it has happened to real people. Okay,
Mhm.
let's go through the list that the article has at the bottom. Ambassador Sam Brownback has been deplatformed, debanked. Defense of Liberty, Arkansas Family Council, Nigel Farage, our very own General Michael Flynn was also debanked. This is the guy who was the head of national security for the United States of America. And basically Obama's cronies forced him out. See the movie. Great movie. It's on Amazon. Okay. It's violating human justice. 100%.
Yeah. Well, it's control. If you have a cashless society, you can control the population. That's the ultimate goal of the whole thing. I've been against the whole idea of a cashless society for a very, very long time, but now I can't operate outside of it. You just can't. You can't make certain purchases. You can't make certain transactions. You know, it's really, really, really hard to operate on a cash-based system now because they have made it virtually impossible to do so. You have to have a bank. You have to have a place to store your cash. You can't just, go to a bank and if you have a regular job where you're, making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, you've got to have some place to put your cash, and you usually can't just cash a check for $6,000. So,
and try teaching a kid, by the way, who's growing up and starting to learn what money is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just hand them a piece of plastic and try to explain to them that there's this numerical amount somewhere out there that, quantifies how much money a mom has to buy groceries, it's like, what? Compared to, printing out a few dollar bills and saying, here you go, Jimmy, here's your allowance for the week. You have that amount of money. Okay. There's basic stuff like that. So it's serious. Okay. It's communism in many ways. It's this insane desire to control and to replace God and to take away the role of God and the rights of people, the inalienable rights that we have as human beings created by God in God's image to exist and flourish and get to heaven, right? So we're up against a lot, and it's not over just because we won on November 5th.
Right. Yep.
What's your what's trending of the week, Michael? You're gonna show me what's going on there. What'd you pick?
Yeah, okay. Go ahead and throw that up there, and I'll explain it to you. So here we have.
Oh, great! I'm so glad you picked that one.
Yep.
Excellent. Good.
Here we have Nancy Pelosi telling the National Catholic Reporter that she ignored Archbishop Corleone's 2022 ban on receiving Holy Communion, which should ramp it up to the next step of excommunication, because to bar her from Holy Communion, it's a part of Canon Law 915. It's a step. Okay. She's been told that you are obstinately persistent in grave manifest sin. And because of that, you are to be denied Holy Communion. So priests are supposed to be withholding communion from her. This isn't just a matter of her not approaching. Okay, that's Canon 916. This is about priests withholding communion from her. And she said that she has ignored the ban, which means that also the priests involved have ignored the ban too. So Archbishop Corleone needs to investigate what priests have given her Holy Communion, which is a complete violation. And on top of that, he should start in enacting the next step of excommunication for her.
So what are you supposed to do if that priest comes back to you and says, well, when you put the ban on her, she did go to the Vatican the week after?
Doesn't matter. The law resides in the diocese and under the authority of the bishop, period.
By the way, audience, this literally did happen. She literally did go to the Vatican and said the Pope.
Oh, yeah.
Was that actually on camera? Did we actually see the Pope giving her, or at least one of his?
No, it was reported afterward.
And it was not denied, by the way, by the Vatican. Right. It's typical Perona style is to let the get out there, never deny or confirm, right? So
Biden did the same thing.
Absolutely right. So the jurisdiction, as you were explaining, does have, the diocese has precedence in that sense. So Look, this is not some laughing matter. I mean, the reality is that Nancy Pelosi, who she's 83 years old, she could pass away very soon, right? She could face her creator having blatantly stare down the authority of the Catholic Church in that holy way and receive our Lord in the state of sin. Okay.
Yeah, she's got one foot in the grave and the other foot on a bar of soap. I mean,
it's serious, and I think it just goes back to when I saw that. Did you see? By the way, this is my de facto post of the week. The post from the USCCB asking Biden to commute the death penalty.
I did. Yeah.
I mean, again, it's great. The mercy, all that stuff. And I think Pope Francis, this is, by the way, because Pope Francis said the same thing too. So probably the bishop echoed it. Look, it's great. We want to help people out. We want to have mercy. We want to forgive. Okay. But first of all, two things. Number one, you can't see the fact that the death penalty actually is a Catholic thing. Okay. There's a reason for this. Okay. And by the way, it's not just a pragmatic value because we can't just, we can't protect the population. So we have to kill, right?
Right.
It's not pragmatic. It goes deeper theologically, right?
Absolutely. Well, we have to remember the death penalty was first enacted by God himself.
That's right.
God himself in the Garden of Eden. He told Adam, if you eat this, you will die. You don't get clearer than that. And he wasn't saying that you're going to die right away. And in fact, it was the sacrifice of the lamb that took place afterward that commuted the sentence for a period. But Adam did eventually die. And the reason why the place at Calvary is called Golgotha, the place of the skull, is because that's where Adam's skull was buried. And the tradition is that the blood that came down from the cross and into the ground leaked into the mouth of the skull of Adam. That's the tradition. So when you look at the death penalty, it is a reflection of that reality that we are all under that same penalty of Adam. And the capital punishment exists as that minor reflection of that greater reality, which is why it is theologically sound. And you can't ever say that it's evil or intrinsically evil, because then you would be calling God evil.
It's a support for society. And it's also, in its own way, it's an act of mercy for the person who committed the crime.
Absolutely, because only the condemned know their exact moment of death. And that gives them every opportunity to repent.
Absolutely, or deter them from doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of value. But my getting at though too is, okay, so we are concerned. We don't, want to have mercy on people at times, as Christ himself does. But the concern for people's physical death is given so much more important at times, it seems, than people losing their souls. I mean, you think about the first Jesuits that came, like Isaac Jones, John the Brebeuf. Read what they wrote, the way they talk. We used to read in seminary all the time. Just they were so concerned about the salvation of souls. Salvation of souls. That was like in their brains. They lived. They woke up every single day. They disregarded their own human lives. Isaac Jones lost 3 fingers, right? Yeah. But it was all about the eternity. And I think we miss that. We need that back. We need lay people as well, priests, all of us, to be just focused. That's the number one thing, is to get people to heaven. Yes, your physical health is important, but it's the soul. And even with the abortion pill, it's not just saving lives for saving lives, but it's saving lives because that also has an effect on their soul. So,
right.
Our work is we're in the world, not of it, and we got to keep. We have to talk about these temporal issues because there are spiritual issues at hand. And as we wrap up the show, just a couple quick announcements. We next week will be America Fest happening here at Turning Point USA. They are partly the architects of the great victory, Republican victory for America. They were the ground game during the campaign for Trump. They've asked Catholics to host one of their breakout sessions. So we will be doing that with a very special speaker who we will announce shortly. But that will be happening next week. There'll be roughly 14,000, mostly high school or college kid students here in Phoenix at America Fest. Details on our website. Just a great opportunity for us to really, again, bring Catholicism right to the heart of what the conservative movement, the Take Back America movement is doing, because this is important, because Christ needs to be everywhere. And lastly, we have a credible Catholic patriotic calendar, which will be available for pre-order very shortly. Okay. It's got the traditional Latin Mass feast days. It has the Novus Ordo feast days, and it has a smattering of patriotic feast days or days as well, and beautiful images on every single page of different Catholic American heroes. So you are not going to want to miss out on this. It's a great Christmas gift and something to have to keep close to you during this next 2025 year. Last word, Michael.
No last word. I think that I think we just need to focus on Advent and be prepared for the coming of our Lord at Christmas.
Absolutely. He is coming soon, and let's pray for that moment for all of us. And we also just keep in mind, this comes to me every time I'm in my own prayer, just to keep talking about the people that are in prison, right? The pro-abortion or the pro-life activists, the J6ers, that continue to get sentenced. There have been 10 who have been sent to prison since Election Day, and there are others who are really, really suffering. So let's keep them in mind in prayer during this Christmas season, when they will be away from their families, hopefully getting liberated in January when Trump comes to office. But let's keep them in mind as we celebrate these great and holy days ahead. God bless you all. This is Catholic Champion John Yep, co-host Michael Hichborn. We will see you next week.